Hey, welcome back to Cole's Desk, where, as you can see, usually when I come to my desk, I encourage myself to create before I consume. But in this case, what I'm going to do is talk about something I consumed, and now I'm creating a video about it. Not for the first time. This is a quick review, or at least it's a series of thoughts provoked by a book written by a friend of mine, and this one is Do One Thing and Do It Deep by Gail Smerdon. Gail, thank you so much for sending me a copy of the book. I devoured it in one sitting and I loved it. And for those of you who are interested in the book, I would summarize this book as a call to arms for organizations to focus on what they do well and to go hard on that thing and not to leave themselves spread too thin, etc., etc. I'm sure you can imagine the kinds of insights that you're going to find in here, and I've got to say, Gail has done an incredible job of pulling together a group of ideas from a disparate group of sources and collapse it all together into an easily understandable and easily executable set of principles. So, highly recommend it for people who are looking to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of your organization. And that's actually not the thought that came to mind for me reading the book primarily, which I thought I would share here today. I'm interested in ideas and how we work with them and how we use them. And as I was reading Gail's book, I don't actually work in an organization myself. I'm largely a solo practitioner. And so I'm not really the target audience of Gail's book. But one of the things that I was noticing as I was reading it were the parallels between the topic that she was sharing and what I've been reading in other books. And I'm really interested in the ways that ideas and principles and frameworks intersect with each other and translate into other contexts, if you like. And what I noticed about Gail's book was that it felt to me like it shared a lot of synergy and similarities with something that's been being explored in the personal space for quite a long time. And this, I think, is the book that kind of popularized it the most. It's Deep Work by Cal Newport. So this book is a call to arms for individuals to focus, basically. And it's it rails against the social media, notifications-based electronic world that we live in. And it's a very well-researched and effectively delivered book about how to organize these principles in a personal sense. And so what I was noticing about Do One Thing and Do It Deep is that it's taking the same set of ideas, this like the principles or the big picture idea of focusing your attention, which has been really deeply explored in a personal sense, but it's now exploring it in a organizational sense. And I reckon there are loads of opportunities out there for lots of different people to create heaps and heaps of value by taking well-researched, kind of keenly explored areas of expertise and simply transporting them and applying them in another context in the way that Gail has done with this book. So, for example, I've been thinking recently that if habits are what people exhibit in a behavioral sense on a personal level, then culture is what exists when people exhibit behaviors on an interpersonal level. And culture, to me, is still a subject which is really poorly explored. Like, people talk about culture as this intangible, ethereal thing that's very difficult to adjust, and every culture change project seems to be a crapshoot or a coin flip. And yet, there's all this research and there's like a much more scientific view of behavior change when we look at it on a personal level. And so there's all these ideas, all this IP about habit formation available in the personal sphere. And in the same way that Gail's taken a set of ideas for the personal sphere and applied them in the organizational sphere, I reckon there's the potential to do that with habit formation stuff. It's well researched in the personal sphere. What about we take that set of ideas and translate it into another space? And it's not only taking ideas, to be clear, from personal to interpersonal or from individual to organization. I reckon every idea has the the potential to shine in a new way or reflect a new light when you transport it out of its original context and put it somewhere else. That's why metaphor can be so incredibly powerful as a way for illuminating new areas of exploration, because we're taking an understanding from an existing space and trying it out somewhere new and seeing if the pattern matching and the pattern recognition generates wisdom or insight in this new space. So, one final thing, and if you found that interesting, that's great. To be honest, this last bit of the video is a bit ridiculous, and if you want to just quit while you're ahead now and leave, that's fine. But I wanted to make one more point, which is pretty silly. I love this model that Gail shares, which talks about going from can't be asked to half-asked to asked and finally to kick-ass. And the thing I love most about it is that she's chosen to spell arse in the traditionally British and or Australian way, A-R-S-E. And that just matters more to me than it should. Like, does it really matter if someone spells arse the American way, A-S-S? No, not really. But for some reason, I have this deep sentimentality for the word arse as I learned to spell it as a 10-year-old or something. Which anyway, it doesn't matter, but it brings me around to a point that I want to make about the hypocrisy of my own position there, which is nobody owns language, and language is never correct. Language is just a medium of communication, and it evolves at a rate, I don't know, 100 million times faster than genetics ever did. If you look at Old English, okay, if you go back 200 years, it looks a bit ye olde. If you go back 400 years, you can recognise about half the words. If you go back 600 years, you can recognise a few words. And if you go back 800 or 1,000 years, even though they're still, in theory speaking, English, you can't recognise any of it. In fact, even most of the characters are completely foreign to you. Anyone at any point in the history of the evolution of that language could have said, this right here is the right language. This is how something's spelled correctly. This is how a grammar is supposed to be structured. And that would make you wrong. And are you wrong? I don't think so. Language evolves. It changes. And there's a thing that those of us who are lucky enough to get access to a good education often do. We use language as a weapon to keep other people down. We say, I'm better at this than you, and that makes me smarter than you or superior to you in some way. And that judgment is baked deep into my cynical past, and it's something that I'm working really hard to consciously overcome. I'm consciously trying really hard now not to judge spelling errors or the use of the word his when they meant he's, or the wrong there, or whatever it is, because it doesn't matter. What matters is communication. And if I can understand what they're saying and they can understand what I'm saying, then we are in a dance together. And the specifics of it really don't matter that much. So anyway, there's my rant for the afternoon. Enjoy your weekend. Cheers.